What makes one a Buddhist? It's a question I hear all the time. You know, when can I call myself a Buddhist? What makes me a Buddhist? But the real question is, what are the qualities that we need to become a Buddhist? You can call yourself a Buddhist any time you like. You may not be a Buddhist, but you can call yourself one. I was explaining last night that sometimes we used to, you know, people come and knock on your door, these religious people, and they want to talk to you about that. And we wouldn't know what we were talking about, but it's like, oh, I'm a Buddhist, and they didn't know what you're talking about either, so they'd go away, you know. So we used to use the term just to make Christians leave us alone, because they didn't understand Buddhism, nor did we. So a lot of people out there are calling themselves Buddhist. When I first became interested in Buddhism, as the brother was saying, it was in India, and it was just by chance that we met up. The Dalai Lama happened to be in the same place that we were, so we went to listen to. He does public speaking every so often, and so I'd heard of the Dalai Lama. I figured he was a pretty cool bloke, and I'd go and have a listen to what he had to say. And there were some things that gelled with me, if you like. And part of the way during his 2-week talking, he gave people the opportunity to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and to go and do 5 precepts. So I quite happily shoved my hand up in the air and go, yeah, that's me, you know. And so a whole bunch of us, we went forward and we took refuge in the Buddha. We took our 5 precepts, and we were so happy to be Buddhist that we ran up to the bar to have a few drinks to celebrate our newfound religion. You know, I was like, well, hey, I'm a Buddhist. You know, and a lot of people are like that. And even in my own life, even as I started to take Buddhism a bit more seriously, I was still doing things that you really don't want to be doing and calling yourself a Buddhist. And I was saying that, like, I was a bit clever because I was trying my best to keep the precepts. So each morning I would very religiously get up and I would take the precepts, you know. I had a little Buddha in my room, and I would sit down and I'd take precepts. On a Friday and a Saturday I used to take 4 precepts. I wouldn't take the 5th one just in case I went out drinking with my buddies, you know. So I figured it was okay if I didn't take it. I wasn't actually going to break it, you know. 80%. And so I could quite happily go out and have a few beers and have a good time with my friends. And interestingly enough, people used to say to me sometimes, because when I decide to play up, I can really play up, you know. I know how to be bad. I educated myself from a very young age on how to do bad very well, you know. And sometimes people would say to me, I thought you said you were a Buddhist. And I'd just say to them, I didn't say I was a good Buddhist. And that was okay, you know. And of course, yeah, so I would say to them, I didn't say I was a good Buddhist. And then I'd use that classic Western mindset that, well, Buddhism's not about thou shalt not. See, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Buddhism, as I used to explain to people, is more about, it's probably best if you don't kill. And it's probably best if you don't steal, but the Buddha didn't tell us not to do anything. He just told us why it might not be such a brilliant idea to do things. And this is the way the Western mind operates at times. You know, we're very good at twisting things ever so slightly to our own benefit. So I want to look at a few misconceptions here first of all. In the Dhammapada, verse 393,
part of verse 393. It says, by birth one is no Brahman. Now, while the Buddha was talking to a Brahmin about this particular thing, it applies to Buddhism, By birth, one is not a Buddhist. And there are a lot of people, not just in Buddhism, but in a lot of religions, you say, oh, what religion are you? And they're like, oh, I'm Spanish, I'm a Catholic. I'm Thai, I'm a Buddhist. Well, it doesn't work like that. If you're born in Thailand, you're Thai. If you're born in Spain, you're Spanish. If my mother had given birth to me in McDonald's, would it make me a Big Mac? No. In actual fact, I was born in a hospital. I'm not a doctor either. So we can see that it's not by our birth that we become a Buddhist. It's a misconception that people have. And when you get this misconception, then you actually find Buddhism being practiced very, very badly. We were just talking here earlier on this evening before the Dhamma talk started about the situation in Thailand right now. And a lot of people watching the news just sit there and say, I thought Thailand was supposed to be a Buddhist country. And yet for months and months they've watched violence on the streets, they've heard news of rocket grenade attacks on different protesters and all this sort of thing. And people say, I thought they're supposed to be Buddhist. And these protesters, a lot of them would go straight from the protest sites, or if they'd been fighting and goodness knows, and then they'd go off to the temple to make merit. Well, it doesn't work like that, but this is what people seem to think is the way that Buddhism works, is I can go out, do what I want to do, then go to the temple, a few baht or a few ringgit over to the monk, and he'll say a few magic words over my head, and salvation is assured. And where people get this teaching from, I've got no idea, but it's something that's crept in, a cultural thing that's crept into Buddhism, and it's truly a misunderstanding of what it means to be a Buddhist. So now, so my next one I want to talk about is the 5 precepts. If we just come into a temple or into a centre like this and we rattle off the 5 precepts without reflecting upon what the 5 precepts mean, then it's just become a rite, it's just become a ritual. It has absolutely no meaning. And I was saying just before about my taking 4 precepts because I knew I was going to go out on the booze. Well, I've actually witnessed, I don't know, in the West, if we promise to do something but we don't mean it, we cross our fingers. I promise I'll do that. And we've got no intention of doing it at all. Well, I've been witness on more than one occasion to people, they come in and they're doing their 5 precepts, and they're all very serious. And then you get to the 5th precept and you see this take place. Yeah. You see, it's the same thing, huh? I'll say it, but I don't mean it, Or you get the monk says the precept and then the lay people are following, you get all this on the person who coughed didn't say it. So, so it doesn't matter. And I have seen people walk out of the vihara and go to their vehicles, especially if there's something happening in the temple, and start to drink whiskey. You know, and it's like, hang on, you just took 5. Oh no, you coughed. It's okay, you know. And it gets to the stage. I've been offered whiskey by lay people. That's how bad some people can get once they start drinking. You know, I mean, you're walking around in robes and somebody comes and offers you whiskey. You know, it's like, you know, seriously? You know, I mean, that's not Buddhism at all, you know. I'm sure most of you people aren't going to come up to me at the end and go, hey, listen, we've got a nice bottle of Jack Daniels, would you fancy a couple of shots, you know? I mean, it's not the way it works. And so you can see that for some of these people, they've got no concept at all, but they do believe that they're Buddhist because of the country of birth and the fact that they're walking into a temple and taking precepts. The precepts are, you know, it's like the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. They seem to think that the precepts are some sort of magic beans that's going to grow a big tree that's going to get them into heaven, you know. And it doesn't work like that. It's just, it's a corruption of the Dhamma, you know. And this is where we see, you know, Westerners, they're very critical. Not that they're perfect, you know, but they like to believe they're better than everybody else. And they observe a lot of this behaviour. And then, you know, there are certain sites that I've visited in the past, you know, on the web, and they're not very nice about Buddhists, you know, because of things that they've observed. You know, they don't go and observe practicing monks. They don't go and observe lay people who are truly trying their best to be Buddhist. Everything is what they see on the surface, and there's so much of it, unfortunately, you know. Oh yeah. When I was a layperson and I would be visiting Thailand, and I remember once I'd come down from Chiang Mai, caught the train down from Chiang Mai, needed to take a taxi from the train station to Bang Lampu. Now, I'd caught a taxi from Bang Lampu to the train station, and it cost me 60 baht. You know, good karma was taking place because I'd found a taxi that the meter worked. You know, it's very difficult to find a taxi with a working meter in Thailand. So I was stood at the rank at the train station, and the guy said, oh, you want a taxi? I went, yeah, you know, I want to go here. He goes, okay, you know, 250 baht. And I'm like, excuse me? I said, it's 60 baht, you know. And he goes, oh, no, much traffic. You know, taxi drivers love that one, much traffic, you know. Well, that area, there's always much traffic. And I said to him, no. So he said, okay, 150 baht. And I went, no. I said, you know, put your meter on. He's like, meter broken. You know, and he's busy giving me all of this, and then he had a Buddha statue on the dashboard, you know. So I said, before we take this discussion any further, I said, maybe you should take the Buddha down from the dashboard. I said, and put him in the glove compartment. I said, because I said, I really don't think you should be telling lies, I said, and trying to steal from people, I said, in front of the Buddha. So he looked at me and went, oh, he said, you're a Buddhist. I said, 80 baht. And it's like, the Buddha didn't say we're allowed to steal from non-Buddhists, you know. But that's the way some people work, you know. So he's got no idea. But yeah, you know, as soon as you mention, oh, you're lying in front of the Buddha, he became a very good Buddhist and was only going to charge me a nominal amount over the correct fee, because I was actually supposedly a Buddhist. So, yeah. Chanting. I used to love this. In Thailand, often when we're on a bus, there's a lot of police roadblocks, especially up in the northern part of Thailand. You know, you're fairly close to the border. And you know, so they'll stop all the cars, they'll stop all the coaches and stuff, get on, check people's ID. And often the police, they'd get on the bus and, you know, there's prafalang. sitting there in the back, We had to sit in the back of the bus. And the cop would come up and he'd like, are you a monk? I went, yeah. He'd say, okay, can you chant? It's like, yeah, I go, chant something. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato. Oh, very good, And so now they're quite content that you must be a Buddhist monk because you can chant, which is why there are so many fake monks running around Thailand, because everybody in Thailand can chant, But in Thailand, it's a very, very big part of being a Buddhist is your ability to chant, Meditation, no, that's not important. No, if you can chant, you're a good Buddhist, Meditation is a secondary thing. And so we used to get this all the time, go down to the immigration office, chant something for me, Jump into a taxi, chant something for me. I was always chanting. They believe if you can chant, you must be a Buddhist, But chanting, anybody can learn how to chant, It doesn't make you a Buddhist. It just means you can learn some words and you can chant along to the tune or the lack of tune if you're in the forest tradition. They don't like doing tune when they're chanting. So, what makes a person a Buddhist? We've seen what doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong, by the way, there's nothing wrong with chanting. Chanting's very good. Chanting helps us to remember the qualities of the Buddha and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with chanting, but it can become a ritual. It just becomes words that we do every time we go into a town. We don't reflect upon the words. Then it becomes a ritual. It becomes meaningless. So first of all, in order to become a Buddhist, you have to hear the Dhamma. So you go to a church, to a temple, you go to a Buddhist center, and you hear a teacher speak the Dhamma. Now, hopefully, what you're hearing is the Dhamma that was taught by the Buddha. This is always a problem. It's got to be the Dhamma taught by the Buddha, and a lot of people teaching what I call Dhamma light. Sometimes they cut bits of the Dhamma out because the audience doesn't like to hear it. In New Zealand, on a couple of occasions, I was asked if I would go somewhere and give a Dhamma talk, and I'd be quite happy to do so. And then the person invited me goes, just talk about whatever you like, but don't talk about karma and rebirth, because Westerners aren't keen on the topic of karma and rebirth, because it sounds too much like heaven and hell and being good and being bad and being judged by God, so they don't want you to discuss these things. So I'd go down to the centre and I'd do a talk on karma and rebirth, because I won't do Dharma light. As far as I'm concerned, I teach from the suttas. When I'm doing a Dharma talk on the sutta, I teach from the sutta, and I won't take bits out of the sutta just to make my audience happy. The Dharma was taught we're supposed to think about the Dhamma. It's supposed to challenge us sometimes. Sometimes we feel really good by what we hear, and other times we really need to go home and sit down and think about what the speaker actually said. The Buddha didn't always say things to please his audience. On many occasions the audience were a little bit upset by what the Buddha had to say. But the Buddha taught the truth. And so we need to find a teacher. And so it's not always easy, because especially if you're starting out in the Dhamma, you don't know what the true Dhamma is. And often, somebody says, oh, you should go hear the speaker, he's really funny, the speaker's really charismatic, the speaker, and we go and we listen to them and we go, oh yeah, he's really cool. But is he actually teaching the true Dhamma? This can be very difficult to find out. But we are quite lucky, because we have the suttas written down for us. So we can always go back to the suttas and test what it is that the speaker, whether he be a monk, whether it be a lay person, whatever they told us, it has to agree with the suttas. If it doesn't, then that person is speaking false Dhamma. So once we start to study the Dhamma, we start to listen to the Dhamma, then we start to develop saddha, which is a faith or a confidence in the Buddha. I tend to use the word confidence because, again, the word faith in the Western society has connotations with Christianity and they don't like it. So I tend to use the word confidence. So it's a confidence in the Buddha. When we have confidence in the Buddha, then we start becoming interested in the Dhamma, you know. The Dhamma starts to mean more and more to us. And we start to understand that out of compassion, the Buddha taught us for 45 years, the Buddha taught this Dhamma. And, you know, we know when we read the suttas that this wasn't something the Buddha particularly wanted to do, you know. I mean, he rediscovered the Dhamma and then he's like, oh, who am I going to teach this to? You know, so he's ready to go and run off and sit in the forest, you know, until Brahma came and had a bit of a chitty-chatty with him, and, you know, then it was decided, you know, the Buddha could see that there were people who could get taught, there were people who could attain enlightenment. And so he, out of compassion for all of us, taught the Dhamma. So we've got saddha, we've developed saddha. Saddha is to appreciate that which is good. You know, this saddha, it's a confidence in something that is good, you know. And this is the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Arya Sangha. And I do say Arya Sangha because I hear some monks say, yes, and the Sangha, but actually the Buddha spoke about the Arya Sangha. You know, a lot of the Sangha these days, yeah, they're not particularly good. Some of them are, some of them aren't, you know. But the Buddha spoke about the Arya Sangha. The Arya Sangha are those who are practicing and have attained, you know, at least path or fruit of stream entry. This is your Arya Sangha. You know, of course, it's hard for us to work out who is Arya as well. I mean, there's in one of the suttas, there's actually two monks. I can't give you the sutta reference right now, but there's two monks. They're both arahants, and each one of them is trying to help the other one become an arahant because they don't know that the other one is an arahant. So if an arahant can't tell who an arahant is, it's going to be really difficult for us to tell if somebody's reached any particular path. And so what we usually have to do, the Buddha says, you know, you've got to stay with somebody for a length of time. You've got to see how they are in their personal lives. You know, it's not just a case of, I mean, somebody can come and sit here and talk to you and seem very nice and everything else, but then they could leave here and just be the nastiest person that you would never ever want to meet, you know. So, you know, some people are very good at selling themselves as something that they're not. And so we do need to try and spend time with a teacher. This confidence in the Buddha, it's an unshakable confidence, you know. Once you've started to investigate, and this is the thing, you know, this ehipassiko, you know, this thing that, you know, revolutionise things, you know, because most religions tell you, you know, this is the way it is, believe it, you know. Buddha never said that. Buddha said, ehipassiko, come and see for yourself, investigate this thing. And so we start to investigate, and we get this strong confidence. It's an unshakable confidence. Nobody will be able to move you from the confidence that you have placed in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, and in the Sangha. No matter how good they are at talking, no matter how clever they sound, your confidence has been built, so much that there's no way they're going to be able to shift your way of thinking. So when we start to develop this, the next thing we start to develop is sila. We need to have sila, the practice of morality. And Bhante Punyaji refers to it as doing a U-turn. We've been living our life one way, and now we do a complete U-turn, and we start to live our life another way. And we actually want to become moral people. We actually start to see the benefit in morality. And this is where we start to practice the 5 precepts. And so we understand, because if we harm another animal, we understand that they're going to suffer. And we understand that I don't want to suffer, so this animal doesn't want to suffer, and so we try our best not to harm. The precepts, the first 4 precepts, they have a tendency to, that's compassion for other people, for other beings. The 5th precept actually protects ourselves. And for somebody who willingly admits to his not taking of the 5th precept quite a lot, I actually find it's probably the most important of the precepts for a layperson, because when we break the 5th precept, it's so easy for the other 4 to tumble. If you were to check with your prisons minister and to get some figures, find out how many people are sitting in prisons here in Malaysia because they did something stupid under the influence of drink or under the influence of drugs. These other precepts just fall so quickly when we're intoxicated. So the practice of keeping the 5 precepts is the practice of morality. And with the practice of morality, we start to cultivate a sense of selflessness, chaga. It's view chaga as a form of sacrifice, if you like. We start to let go. Now, one of the ways we do this is through the practice. The first that we usually teach people is the practice of Dhamma. We were talking before about teaching things like this to small children. It's the way to start educating young children. We can't sit them down and start giving them suttas at the age of 4, but we can certainly start teaching a young child how to be generous. You see young kids. You get 2 kids and there's. One of the kids picks up a toy, but the other kids are going to want that toy, and they start to fight over the toy, because the child has already established within himself a sense of self and a sense of selfishness. This is my toy. I own this, So when we start to practice chaga, we're practicing letting go. So it's self-sacrifice. We give up our time. So many people. I see it over at the Mahavihara at Brickfields. You have the lay devotees who come in every day, taking care of the needs of the monks, making sure that we're taken care of with our food and everything else. They come in, they got smiles on their faces, and you can see that they want to give, The most beautiful is the little children. I'm a little worried I'm going to get fat, because Aries, you know, you can only eat so much, you know, but when they send the little kids around with food, how do you say no to a child who wants to give a monk something to eat, you know? So you've got all these little kids going past, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get so fat. But it's great to see the children wanting to do this, you know. They are learning how to give, and they can carry this on outside of the temple. Giving, though, this is another thing with giving. When we give, we have to give expecting absolutely nothing in return. You know, I've been in temples where people, they've got, like, you know, some money, and they go up, there's a guy sitting up the front just behind the monks, and the guy's got a book. Okay, Mrs. Such and Such, X amount of money, and then the next one. Now you got other people, they're just going and placing money into a donation box. They're not going anywhere near the man with the book. And then just before the service will start, or just after the end of the service, the guy gets up and he's got his microphone, he's going, and today Mrs. Such and Such gave X amount of money. It's like, if you're giving to have your name read out over the microphone, well, any virtuous merit that you may have accumulated, you just spent it just by having your name read out. You've given for the sake of the ego, you know. It's not selfless giving. As soon as you want to start advertising that I did this and I did that, it's no longer selflessness. You are looking for some sort of a gain. And we see this a lot of times. People are like, you know, I give money because I can get a heavenly rebirth. You know, so, well, one, that's not guaranteed, and two, it's the wrong reason for giving. You know, you give because you want to. One of the most precious things that I've ever had given to me as a monk was in Sri Lanka, and I was doing my arms round through the jungle, and a little girl came up, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, and she kind of got my attention. So I stopped and I opened up the lid of my alms bowl. She had nothing. She placed it in the bowl and she weighed me. And I thought it was the most beautiful gift. She had nothing to give, so she gave nothing, which was everything she had, you know. All she wanted was to be able to offer the monk something, you know. It was the most beautiful offering that a monk could expect to have, you know, and it's a memory that I'll carry with me for a long time of the gift that that girl gave to me. You know, she expected nothing in return, and it was just so lovely. And so many people do give that way, you know, they give hoping for nothing in return. You know, often in, you know, countries like Thailand, when we go out on alms round, I used to get into trouble because people would put something in my bowl and I used to just turn and walk away. Yeah, you know, I forgot the Yata Variwa Pura Paripurentu Zagarami. It's like, come on, I've got to eat before midday. You know, I've got to get back to the temple. And if I've got to do this with every person that puts something in my alms bowl, by the time I get back, I'm not going to be allowed to eat it. You know. But it's expected. The monks are expected to chant, and it's like, but we're not supposed to chant. You're supposed to give us the food because you want the monks to go back, eat, meditate, study, and be able to give you teaching. This is why the offering is given. And you know, but we're expected so many places. They want us to, and as I say, some of these chants can get very, very long, you know. So it would take you effort to do an alms round, you know. I mean, my alms round used to be about 1.5 kilometres long. 3 kilometres by the time I'd done the return journey. Could you imagine me yatta waharing my way up and down that road? You know, it would take me forever. And so we have to remember that when we are giving, we give, expecting nothing in return. That's the best way that we can possibly give. You know, and it doesn't have to be money, you know. You can't buy your way into Nibbana. You know, so many people just give generously of their time. You know, volunteering behind the scenes. Some people, you just don't see them, but they're out there doing their own thing, you know, because they want to help the community, they want to help the centre, you know. They don't ask for recognition. And, you know, these are the people, I call them the heroes of Buddhism, you know. Those people that are just out there quietly working away without trying to get gain or fame or anything like that, you know. This is chaga, when we start to give selflessly, you know, of our time. And as I say, it doesn't have to be money. Monks have gotten very good at finding ways of making money, you know. And a lot of monks teach when you hear the teachings on dana, you know, it seems to involve cash payments quite a lot. And, you know, that's one of those things that are causing the decline of Buddhism, is monks who are openly out there soliciting for cash. You know, that's just wrong. But then a lot of people think that it's the easy way. You know, if I put some, I mean, we used to go, you know, you go on Pindabat and people are putting money into your alms bowl. You know, it's like it's supposed to be food going into my alms bowl. You know, people, you know, for a lot of people, I can't be bothered going to the market, so I just chuck a couple of ringgit in the bowl, job done. You know, it's like, we're not supposed to, the person's intention might be genuine, but, you know, you're not supposed to be chucking money in a monk's alms bowl, you know. And you've also got to watch out for that bloke at Chinatown that ties strings around your wrist. You know, I think he's a fake monk, somehow. Yeah, when we learn to freely give, our minds will become more relaxed. When our minds become more relaxed, our bodies become more relaxed. And thanks to Brother Billy, I've learned something. When our body is not relaxed, and I know some of Brother Billy's talks, he's talking about fight and flight responses. But even, I believe, under normal, semi-stressful situations, we have things like adrenaline pumping into our body. Things like was it cortisone you were talking about? Cortisol. Now, when these things are coming in, our immune system's shut down to allow it to take place. So, if you've got an unsettled mind, then your body's not relaxed. If your body's not relaxed, it may not be chucking massive amounts of adrenaline and stuff out, but it's going to be leaching out, you know. And so our immune systems are going to be closing down all the time to allow this stuff out. So if we can relax our mind, we can relax our body, then not only are we becoming mentally fit, but we're becoming physically fit, you know. So there's a win-win situation taking place here, you know, calm mind leading to a calm body, you know. And then the body, because now the immune system doesn't have to keep shutting itself down, so the immune system can start working properly, you know. So we begin to heal physically and mentally, you know. So as I say, it's a win-win situation. Then as we start to progress further, panya will arise. And we all know that, you know, panya, we call it wisdom. And so we start to let go. But what are we letting go of? Lobha, greed, dosa, hatred. and moha, delusion. The delusion of seeing good as bad and bad as good, and belief in a permanent I. So we start to let go of these things and we replace them with alobha, greedlessness, adolsa, hatelessness, and amoha, undeludedness. So when we're not being greedy, when hatred has been eliminated, and when we start to let go of the delusion, then we are Buddhist. Then when somebody says, when can I call myself a Buddhist? Now you know the answer. It's not through where you were born. It's not through, Buddha talks about, it's not by caste. It's not by birth. It's not by tradition, It's by letting go. It's by doing that U-turn. And when you know you've done that, then you can safely say, I am a Buddhist. Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions?